Hello, I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. This series of podcasts is aimed at financial planning professionals and also those who are looking to enter the financial planning profession. We will be talking during the podcast about all things certified financial planner certification related, talking to other CFPs around the world, and also we will be dropping in on some new entrants who've just entered the financial planning profession, and we'll be checking up along the way on a regular basis with them to see how they're getting on. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. And in today's podcast, we are talking about the CISI L7 CFP assessment. And I'm joined by a very special guest who has recently become a CFP professional. And that is John Findlater, who is a financial advisor at NFU Mutual. Hello, John.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for having me today.
It's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for agreeing to be interviewed. And I'm going to dive straight in because we've got lots to cover. And I know that you've got lots of valuable insights to share with our listeners. So let's start at the very beginning and tell us a little bit about how you got into the financial planning profession.
Yes, so I think this is probably the reason why you've asked me to join you today in my slightly wacky route into financial planning. That I've joined as a second career. That I was a professional golfer for a number of years. I turned pro at 17. I went through my Professional Golf Association degree and really enjoyed what I did. I focused on teaching, and that was through a passion of really helping people and building relationships and friendships and just enjoying spending time with people as much as anything. And I was working abroad, and it was really a change of sort of family circumstances that made me want to come back and not continue working in golf. I think it's a different profession to work in if you're working in the UK or if you're working abroad, and it really drove me to look for something else. I have a family history of working in banking and finance, and that was always something that I felt I was going to go into if golf didn't pan out in one way or another. And it took me to October 2021, where I decided that I wanted to leave my last role in golf and pursue a career in financial planning. So it was very much that I was in a fortunate position where I could take some time off. I could sit a number of exams to get me qualified to a certain level. And that really brought me to a toss-up of accountancy or financial planning. I've got a few chartered accountants in the family, my sister-in-law, my wife's godfather, etc. So they were very helpful in talking me out of becoming an accountant and really driving me into financial planning, which is where I felt I was best suited. For me, what my perspective of financial planning was from the brief interaction I'd had with Richard Williams, who I knew, Williams Financial Planning in Wrexham. He seemed like the person who was everyone's friend. That he knew everyone, he got on with everyone, and he also knew all their finances as well. Not that he's also could tell you, but he just seemed like everyone's friend, and he knew how to communicate with people, how to connect with people, and get them to open up and really build those relationships. So that's what drove me into financial planning. So I left golf October 2021, and by March 2022 I was diploma qualified. I'd chosen to go through the CISI, which was predominantly through friends and family who worked in NatWest, and that was what they used at the time. It seemed very, very modern, I think, on the website, and it seemed very easy to know what route you have to take to get qualified and to get your level 4 diploma. Whereas I think other organisations seemed a little bit more dated, seemed a bit more difficult for a complete newbie as I was. So that was my wacky route into financial planning.
Fantastic.
Around that time, I did contact Richard to ask if I could have some work experience. He kindly obliged, and I think it was a couple of months later in May 2022 that I had 2 weeks there. In that time, I had some interviews with the firms, and I got a few job offers, which was amazing. And Richard sat me down on my last day and asked me to stay. He said, "I know you've got some things on the table," and it was so unexpected, really, that I think that the 2 weeks that I'd had there was such a nice time, because I wasn't going in with any agenda thinking I was going to be working there. I think I've just got 2 weeks to really learn from all these amazing people in this business, and to then get an offer from that and join the company was fantastic.
Wow, that's an amazing and truly inspirational journey. But that's not the end of the journey, is it? Because tell us about how you found out about a certified financial planner and why you decided to embark on it so early in your professional career in financial planning.
Yeah, so obviously working with Richard and Lee Gould as well at Williams Financial, that they were both qualified through the CII. Lee was a chartered financial planner, and it was really for me that I wanted to be the most qualified that I could be, just to show that that I'm very serious about this industry and this profession, and I want to be the best that I can. And that's how I sort of approached my career in golf as well, that I'd spend time with people far more intelligent and brilliant than I am to really learn from them. And it was a toss-up between looking at the chartered routes in the CII and the CISI. And I got in touch with someone who you may know quite well, who now does your previous role as the head of financial planning at the CISI, and Sally Plant. And Sally was so helpful in breaking down both avenues, really. She says has some experience with both, and is in a position where she speaks to a lot of financial planners who actually have both sets of qualifications at the higher level. And what really I took away from that was how practical the CISI higher level exams were, in particular the CFP. And that's what made Richard happy for me to go down that route, to obviously pay for my exams and whatever else. And for someone who was driving me to do the exams as fast as I could and do the best I could, he also felt like he didn't value them in a way either, because he said it's great having all this technical knowledge, but it's really about how you apply that to your clients. That's the most important thing at the end of the day, and I felt like that's what the CFP was.
Yeah. And absolutely. It's funny, isn't it, in life, how sometimes you just kind of come across people who, people like him who, have so much insight and knowledge to be able to support you, basically mentoring you from day one, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. In Richard and Lee, I felt like I couldn't have had a better start in the industry. That the jobs that I was offered elsewhere were very much, administration-based roles for someone who hadn't worked a day in the industry. And that was stepping in to help the directors with their time, attending meetings, completing file notes, fact finds, working with an amazing power planning team and pensions team, and really getting immersed into everything you could ever think of within financial planning.
Yeah. And so you embarked on your journey to become a CFP professional, and you sat the level 6 exam then, did you?
I did, yes. So I planned to sit my pension transfers and planning advice exam before that, but unfortunately, due to the issues with my work laptop and sitting remotely at home, I didn't get to sit that. So I was meant to sit that before the level 6 financial planning exam. That ended up being afterwards. So that was a bit of a rush. But the level 6 exam I chose to do in a test centre after the previous issues, understandably. And I felt like that exam again, it was the questions in it were not necessarily what you'd expect. They weren't overly technical in a way. The 20-mark question that I chose was about vulnerable clients.
Yes.
About something that's so at the forefront of the FCA at the moment, that they're thinking of, that with Consumer Duty coming in and something that's really being driven, and that's something that's so relevant now, as opposed to just going over testing your technical knowledge to the nth degree. It's testing your real life knowledge and applying that to your clients, of course.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the discussions that quite a lot of people who have done stacks of exams with the CII, who come across and do a CISI exam for the first time, it's one of the common areas where people feel anxious about the style of questions, because with the CII, lots of people, including me when I sat my CII exams many moons ago now, they always used to say to me, right, well, you can write the right answer and the wrong answer with the CII exam, but with the CISI exam, it's more about applying that knowledge and, being aware of, like you say, being up to date on both consumer duty, as well as vulnerable clients, and, the sorts of things, the impact on the client. And I think that's one of the questions, I think was the section B questions in the exam papers. They are typically, the first two words are critically discuss, aren't they? And I think that was one of the vulnerable clients questions, was critically discuss some issues about vulnerable clients. And I think, instead of in other exams, they're quite often, well, list what would happen in theory, if you came across a vulnerable client. So there are some, quite significant differences in that exam, aren't there?
Yeah. And like you said, although it's a different approach, it really is testing your knowledge to the nth degree. That to have a 20-mark question on vulnerable customers is really saying how rounded are you as a financial planner? How much knowledge do you really have in terms of being able to truly help your clients in all circumstances? Don't get me wrong that the pension transfers plan advice exam obviously is very technical, but then stepping into the financial planning exam, it is a financial planning exam. It's about the practical side of it, which I really did enjoy and felt like I got a lot from.
Yeah. And so after you found out that you'd been successful and passed your level 6 exam for the advanced financial planning, did you go straight on to get the case study, or did you have a little bit of a break?
I did, yes. I went straight on to do the case study, and I also sat the pensions exam at the same time. So
yes, I remember.
It was quite a hectic few weeks. I think it was the 1st of March I sat the level 6 advanced financial planning exam. I can't remember the exact date, but roughly around May time.
They're probably into May, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, the pension transfers plan advice exam at the same time, getting the case study and panicking and looking for help in the form of Jacqueline Lockie, financial planning maestro.
Coming to your rescue.
Yeah.
So let's get into the detail of the case study then. So tell us about your general approach to dealing with this case study and building your financial plan.
Because I was doing so much prior to it, I felt like I wasn't fully prepared in getting your head around the whole, how it needs to be structured, how you structure the case study. And I think even looking back, that even if I had that time, I still wouldn't think I would have managed to get my head around it without some help and assistance. And obviously I signed up for the fast track course, the 4-day course, which I felt was best suited to what I needed in terms of being able to really dive in, have 4 whole days of guided study and practice, and to go through it. And that was my sort of approach. I didn't really have much time to think. It was very much just action, just doing it and being reactive to what you were helping us with, essentially.
And I think one of the first things I probably said to you, that it's going to take 150 hours plus of work. So, when you hear things like that, did you think, oh yeah, I'm going to get started now? Or did you think, yeah, Jackie, in my own good time, I'll get started?
You told us it would be done in 4 days, Jackie. You didn't say it'd be 150 hours. The time side of it, obviously, having 10 weeks, it feels like you have an awful long time to do it. And you really, really don't. And I think the not to jump ahead, but that will be the advice that I'll be giving to anyone looking to sit this is be very aware and very conscious of the time that you have to sit the case study. It certainly is not something to be taken lightly. Put it that way.
So when we think back to the specific areas of the case study, which areas did you find the most challenging?
I think, like I said, after the initial getting your head around tackling how you're going to approach it and the route you will take, I would say just the overall reasoning and evidencing of everything that you do, that you cannot assume anything. And if you do assume something, you have to make a note that you've made that assumption. I think that the one perhaps criticism I had of the case study I received was that it was a new case study and maybe there's a few things that weren't too helpful in there. We had to figure out assumptions for and evidence them in the report. You have such a wide array of knowledge when you get to this point. You sit in a level 7 exam, which is the highest in the UK available, that you feel like you know all these things, but then it's, well, where would I get that information to prove that's right? Whether it's a tax query or maybe a benefits query, perhaps, that where do I find that information? Where do I find that piece of text to say, yes, this is correct, this is how things work, and being able to tie that into your report.
Yeah. And I think assumptions were probably quite new, or quite new for most people actually when doing the course. How did you find them kind of thinking through, we talk about, don't we, during the course about the 3-step process about, looking back historically and, like you say, finding that evidence and then going, right, well, where are you today? And then actually realizing that a lot of people don't, is that the financial plan that you're creating is a forward-looking document, isn't it? So that gives you the wiggle room to be able to add that forward-looking aspect to your assumptions. How did you find that process?
Yeah, I think assumptions, like you said, can make a huge difference on the overall long-term cash flow that the clients will have. There was a lot of talk not too long before we were working together that it was people were starting to say on LinkedIn, popping up saying, "Oh, I'm now putting inflation at 8% for clients. I'm now putting inflation at 9%." And it's well, why are you doing that? Because that's what it is today, but it needs to be the average of what it's going to be over the long term. And for myself, being very new into the industry, that I'd worked obviously with 2 directors who were very experienced, very knowledgeable, would have had these discussions about assumptions, what they use, why they use them, but hadn't really had the license to set them for myself. And also in the sense of there's a lot more assumptions that you think you need. So everyone will think about inflation, investment returns, which they do provide for you, but you do have to get so many others. So it could be school fee inflation, the inflation of jewelry, so many other different things that you wouldn't even think of. And again, finding that information can be a challenging thing in itself and take a lot of time before you even start writing up the case study or start even thinking about any sort of form of solution. It's finding all this information and finding out where to source it from, and then making that decision was certainly very, very challenging, and took a lot more time than you think at the start of the piece of work.
Yes, I liken it a bit like to painting your living room, maybe, and you spend all that time masking the skirting boards and the door frames and the door handles and all of that malarkey, and trying before you put your undercoat on or your 2 coats of your new colour. And it takes like 5 minutes to paint the walls, but it takes you like 2 hours to mask everything. And assumptions are a bit like that, aren't they? They're kind of the groundwork that you're doing before you then launch into building your financial plan.
Definitely. And like you said, everything has to have a reason. It can't just be, oh, let's say this is 7%.
Yes, finger in the air.
Let's just paint the living room green. Yeah.
Yes. And so how did you find, grappling with the spreadsheets because obviously you didn't use any proprietary software to build your financial plan. Did you find that aspect, were you a bit more comfortable with that aspect once you kind of got your head around, what you were being asked to build?
I think if I was doing that on my own, no. I think with the course, it was very helpful that you had the recorded videos that guided us through how to build the spreadsheets and in what order to do it in, making sure that everything was color coded, that we'd always check the trace precedents and the arrows to make sure that the correct formulas were in the right place and they were linking up to the right cells, and having that set in, because it can be one cell that's wrong that messes up your entire spreadsheets.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's just taking your time through it. And I didn't find it too bad. I'm certainly no whiz in Excel. I'm much better now after the course. But I didn't feel like I struggled with the spreadsheet side of it, but it certainly was a mammoth task of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so looking back now, how many hours do you think it took you to pass this assessment? How many hours of work in total? Slightly more than 4 days on a course, I think.
Yes, definitely. It took me slightly longer again because I didn't pass my first term round, so I had to resubmit, which was partly because I didn't leave myself much time at the end.
Uh-huh.
So it took me at least a solid 100 hours. And I mean a solid 100 hours, that's not, Saturday and Sunday, I'll class that as 16 hours when you've had lunch and you've watched a bit of TV and you've made a few cups of tea and things. I think it really was a solid 100 hours altogether.
Wow.
To really go through everything, to take all the steps. I made quite a few errors with the calculations that I was doing later on when I started doing the recommendations. So I'd sort of think I've done something right, and then I realised I forget one thing when I check it through, and then I have to do all the quotes again, all the figures again, and I think I went through that loophole about 5 times, redoing all this piece of work, which obviously was not very beneficial to the amount of time it took me. And it really took much longer than I expected. I took a week's holiday towards the end of it, and I think, to be fair, I had quite a lot going on in a family at the time. I'd sat down with you when we were doing the course, and felt that I wasn't necessarily in the best place, and didn't feel I was mentally ready and mentally 100%, and felt like I was a bit run down, a bit burnt out, that I left it to the end of the window, that 10-week window to do it, booked a week's holiday and said, I'm going to, power through this. I'll get this done. That'll be more than enough time. And it wasn't. And I did get it finished, and I made a very, very simple error at the end of the case study, a couple of small calculations and things that went wrong with the estate planning, which was the most simple part of it, really, that I eventually failed on, having done so well on the other subject areas, getting 85 to 95% on all other aspects.
Wow. But you passed. I mean, how did you find the feedback when you received it on that particular area? Did you think, fair cop, it's a fair assessment of where I went wrong, and therefore you knew what you were looking for, what the assessors were looking for, and what you needed to do to fix it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was very helpful. They put bullet pointed notes on the side of the mark scheme to where you've passed, where you've failed, etc., and really try and point you in the right direction as much as they can within the tolerances, I presume, as to how much they can point you in the right area. And I thought that was very helpful. I realised that I'd made the worst mistake you can ever make of not actually writing in that a whole of life policy was in trust.
Oops.
Which is the most simple thing, and you put so much work into this incredibly complex piece of advice, and forget to write in the most simple thing, which of course it's in trust. Why would you not write it in trust? It's stupid. And I'd made a little mistake on the quick succession relief as well. So that was the sort of crux for me, that the back end of it at the end, when I didn't have enough time, that what should have been the most simple part in many ways, a couple of simple errors, unfortunately didn't, and that didn't pass the first time around.
Just undid you slightly in your final hours before submission. But you got there in the end, because you passed on your second submission quite easily, didn't you?
I did, yes. I wouldn't say quite easily, because I think I was very skeptical just to make sure the rest of it was fully okay, even though, of course, the guidance that you gave us was that you have 6 sections that you need to get at least 50% on, and then the overall percentage is 65%. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. So it was just that final section I had to sort out, but I still wanted to go through it and make sure that this piece of work was as good as it could be, because that was just how I approached it in the first place. So I probably did spend more time than I needed the second time around, but that was just to make sure 100% that this is exactly what it should have been the first time around, which is easier said than done.
Yes.
But yeah, you just want that peace of mind to know that, yes, this is right. I don't want to have to do this again.
No, absolutely.
This is going to be the final time that I submit this.
That's it. I'm done.
And yeah, exactly.
And you were, because you were successful. So many congratulations on becoming a CFP professional. One question though, do you think that it's changed you as a financial planner moving into your role with NFU Mutual now? Do you think it, comparing to, obviously you've had great mentors working where you were, and now moving into this new role, what do you think you will take away from going through the training and the assessment process into your new role?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like we said, I feel very lucky in the background that I've had in terms of the advisors that have helped me, helped train me, in the sense that they very much gave a holistic service to the clients. They were amazing in front of clients, and were so knowledgeable as well. But they would work through essentially limited advice recommendations over time, focus on the current need, that the suitability reports would be product focused. And I think the case study really takes a step back from all of that in that regard, that you're not comparing the price of 2 annuities. You're really creating something that will allow people to live their best lives in any scenario, and having the confidence to know that you can sit in front of a client and truly change their life, and have a piece of work that you've done that helps you to organize everything in your mind and be able to say, yes, I really can think through every single little possible scenario to make sure that any recommendations I do make down the line will be 100% suitable, not just suitable in terms of satisfying the FCA and other things, but really having a huge positive impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. And that, they're great outcomes, aren't they, for all of that hard work that, known you over the months now that we've been working together, that you definitely have changed as a person, and, your outlook on, that drive that you've got, and you've always been a people person from, your golfing career, and enjoying spending time with people. And I think that really comes out, both in this podcast, but also, in the time that we did our course together, that it's always about, people and customers first for you, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what led me to NFU Mutual in many ways as well, that the firm seemed to have that same view, that same point to come from. Being a mutual, it is run by and for the customers. And I feel that that's why I've come into this profession. I've come into this profession to meet people, to build relationships, and to really, really help them. And I feel like the job that we do can be so satisfying, so rewarding, in the way that you can, something that can seem so simple to you, that there's such a lack of education out there in terms of financial services. There's obviously a bad reputation built through years of issues, but there's so much good that can be done at the same time. And
Absolutely.
I think the new breed of advisors coming through, that, in terms of age, in terms of, me being in my 20s, being chartered, being a certified financial planner, and that's as a second career. And I feel so fortunate in what I've had, but I've obviously put a lot of hard work in that sense as well to get where I am.
Yeah, you certainly have.
And to know what you can give, what output you can really give in life, and get from it is second to none. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we are nearly at the end of our interview today, John, but I just want to ask you one final question. And that is, what advice would you give to those who are starting their journey to become CFP professionals today? Do you have any tips to share with us all?
Definitely. I would say firstly to just don't take it lightly. And not that I felt like I did. I felt like I obviously had a lot going on at the time. I was sitting other things as well, and I felt like I wasn't fully prepared, but also felt like I needed a break, which obviously was not the time to feel like you need to take a break. So really, if you're going to sit the CFP, make sure that you don't rush it. You don't sit it at a time when it's not going to be suitable. Make sure that there is, but you have provisions in place to be able to really dedicate time towards this. It's the first one. So to really plan it, to sit it at a time. You have multiple times through the year you can sit this. It's not just a one time a year. It's not twice a year. I believe it's 4 times a year that you can.
Yeah.
You can choose to sit it. So sit it at a time that's really going to be possible for you to not take it lightly, to really fully immerse yourself in this. I think secondly, I would say to definitely obtain support. Don't try and do this on your own. And that's not, again, that's that feeling of don't take it lightly, that, there's people out there like yourself who have such a wealth of knowledge in this. And while you don't sit there and just tell us, do this, do that, you're really guiding us in the right way. And it was such a positive learning experience as well. So, go to the CSI, go through, speak to Jackie, and ask her those questions about what route of support is going to be best for you. And I think finally would be to try and finish the plan as soon as you possibly can. In that you'll never have too much time at the end of the 10 weeks. It's not going to happen. Factor in to have time at the end, but try and finish it within 5 weeks. Make that aim that you will receive the case study. Approximately 2 weeks after that, you'll, of course, have booked your course with Jackie because she's the best. From that, over the next few weeks, try and get as much done as you can where you feel like you're really just putting the nuts and bolts in. You're saying that your whole of life policy is written in trust. Don't make that mistake. And make sure that you've really got time at the end. If you can, plan for week 5 that you're looking to finish or there or thereabouts, you've got that same amount of time again to really go over everything and just make sure that it's the best piece of work that you can submit.
John, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. And I have to say that the golfing profession's loss is certainly financial planning profession's gain. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to watching your career blossom in the years to come. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks to you, Jackie.
It's really interesting, isn't it, to listen to different people who have different experiences of gaining their certified financial planner certification, or maybe developing the financial planning profession at large. If you know anybody who you think might be interested in listening to any of these podcasts, then please do pass on our details. That's it for me. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. See you again soon. Bye for now.